Have you ever found yourself completely rattled by something ridiculously small? Maybe it was someone cutting you off in traffic, turning a calm morning commute into a tirade of frustration. Or perhaps it was a spilled cup of coffee, and suddenly, that tiny mishap felt like the final straw, unleashing a wave of fury that surprised even you. If you've ever felt that hot, rising tide of anger, you're not alone. It's a profoundly human experience. But for something so common, anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions we have. We're often taught to see it as a purely negative, destructive force. Something to be bottled up, suppressed, and ashamed of. But what if that's not the whole story? What if anger isn't the enemy? What if it's a messenger, trying to tell us something important? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on anger. We're not here to judge it, but to understand it. We'll explore the science behind why we feel it, what triggers it, and most importantly, how we can learn to manage it, so that it no longer controls us. Think of anger like a smoke alarm in your house. When it goes off, it's loud, unpleasant, and impossible to ignore. Your first instinct isn't to get mad at the alarm itself. Your instinct is to figure out why it's going off. Is there a fire? Is there just a little smoke from the toaster? The alarm is just a signal. Anger works the same way. It's a powerful signal that something is wrong, something needs our attention. At its most basic level, anger is a biological response. When your brain perceives a threat, whether it's a real physical danger or a perceived psychological one, like an insult or injustice, it kicks into high gear. This is the famous fight or flight response. Your adrenal glands flood your body with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate quickens, your blood pressure rises, and blood flows to your muscles, preparing you for physical action. Your body is ready to fight. This primal system was incredibly useful for our ancestors. If a predator was lurking, that surge of anger and energy was a lifesaver. The problem is, in our modern world, our brains can't always tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and an infuriating email from our boss. The physical response is the same. Our bodies are gearing up for a fight that we can't actually have. And that leaves us swimming in a cocktail of stress chemicals with nowhere for them to go. So, the first step in understanding anger is to give ourselves a little grace. It's a natural, hardwired response. It doesn't make you a bad person, it just makes you human. But what actually flips that switch? What are the triggers? While the specifics are unique to each of us, most anger triggers fall into a few key categories. One of the biggest is the perception of injustice or unfairness. This happens when you feel that a rule, social, moral, or personal, has been broken. Someone takes credit for your work. You see someone being bullied. You get a parking ticket you feel you don't deserve. Your internal sense of fairness is violated, and the anger alarm starts blaring. It's shouting, "This isn't right." Another common trigger is frustration. This is the anger that boils up when your goals are blocked. You're desperately trying to assemble a piece of furniture, and the instructions make no sense. You're working hard to meet a deadline, but your computer keeps crashing. You have a clear objective, and something is standing in your way. That obstacle, that feeling of being stuck, can easily curdle into pure rage. And then there's the feeling of being attacked or personally threatened. This doesn't have to be a physical threat. It can be a threat to our self-esteem, our reputation, or our core beliefs. When someone criticizes you, dismisses your opinion, or insults something you care about, it can feel like a direct assault on your identity. Your brain interprets this as a threat and responds with a defensive wall of anger. It's also important to realize that sometimes, anger is a secondary emotion. Think of an iceberg. The part we see above the water is the anger. But beneath the surface, there might be a much larger, hidden emotion. Often, that hidden emotion is fear, hurt, or sadness. It can feel more vulnerable to admit, "You hurt my feelings," than to say, "I'm furious with you." Anger can feel like a shield, a way to protect ourselves from feeling those more tender, painful emotions. Take a moment to think about your own anger. When was the last time you were truly angry? Can you trace it back to one of these triggers? Was it a perceived injustice? A blocked goal? A personal attack? Or was there maybe, just maybe, a feeling of hurt or sadness hiding underneath? Understanding our own personal triggers is like being handed a map to our own emotional landscape. It's the first and most crucial step toward navigating it effectively. Because once we know what sets us off, we can start to unpack the most important part of the anger equation, our thoughts. The famous Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This ancient wisdom is the cornerstone of modern cognitive psychology. It's not just the event itself that makes us angry. It's our interpretation of the event. Imagine two people are driving, and both get cut off by the same car. The first person thinks, "What a complete jerk. He did that on purpose to disrespect me. He thinks he's more important than everyone else on the road." This person's heart is likely pounding. Their knuckles are white on the steering wheel. They are filled with rage. The second person, in the exact same situation, thinks, "Wow, that was close. I hope everything is okay with them. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital or dealing with some kind of emergency." This person might feel a brief jolt of adrenaline, but it quickly subsides. They might feel concern, or they might just shrug it off and keep driving. The event was identical. The trigger was the same. But the emotional outcome was wildly different. The only thing that changed was the story they told themselves about the event. Our anger is often fueled by a set of hot thoughts, or cognitive distortions. These are unhelpful thinking patterns that act like gasoline on the fire of our frustration. One of these is black and white thinking. This is when we see things in absolute terms, with no middle ground. This project is a complete disaster. My whole day is ruined. Another is personalization. This is the tendency to take everything personally, like in our traffic example. We assume the other person's behavior is a direct, intentional slight against us. There's also mind reading, where we assume we know what other people are thinking, usually something negative about us. I know he thinks I'm an idiot, and a big one is overgeneralizing. Using words like always and never. You always do this. I can never catch a break. These thoughts create a reality where we are the victim, where the world is unfair, and where others are intentionally trying to harm us. In that reality, anger seems like the only logical response. But here's the empowering part. If our thoughts fuel our anger, then changing our thoughts can douse the flames. We have the power to challenge that initial, automatic interpretation. We can learn to question our hot thoughts. This doesn't mean being a doormat or pretending that legitimately bad things aren't happening. It means creating a sliver of space between the trigger and our reaction. A space where we can ask, is there another way to look at this? This brings us to the crucial question. What do we do? How do we manage this powerful emotion when it shows up at our door? Management strategies can be broken down into two types. What to do in the heat of the moment, and what to do for long-term prevention. Let's start with the immediate, in the moment, strategies. Your smoke alarm is blaring. The anger is here. The single most powerful thing you can do is learn to pause. That's it. Just pause. Even for a second. This pause creates that critical space between the stimulus and your response. It's in this space that you regain your power of choice. Instead of an automatic, knee-jerk reaction, you give your rational brain a chance to catch up with your emotional brain. One of the best ways to activate this pause is through your breath. When you're angry, your breathing becomes shallow and quick, confined to your chest. This keeps your body in that fight or flight state. Diaphragmatic breathing, or deep belly breathing, does the opposite. By taking slow, deep breaths that make your belly rise and fall, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your body's rest and digest system. It acts as a natural tranquilizer, lowering your heart rate and blood pressure. Just a few deep breaths can be enough to turn down the volume on your anger, giving you the clarity to think. Try it right now. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, feeling your stomach expand. Hold it for a moment. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. Another, in the moment, technique is a pattern interrupt. Your anger is running on a loop, a well-worn track in your brain. To manage it, you need to jolt it off that track. This can be as simple as changing your physical state. If you're sitting down, stand up. If you're inside, step outside for a moment. Go to another room. Splash some cold water on your face. The physical shift can create a mental shift, breaking the cycle of angry thoughts. You can also use a grounding technique, like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Wherever you are, stop and silently name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This simple exercise forces your brain to focus on your immediate sensory experience, pulling it away from the abstract, infuriating story it was telling itself. It anchors you in the present moment, where the anger has less power. These are your emergency tools. They are designed to help you ride out the initial wave of anger without doing or saying something you'll later regret. But to truly master anger, we have to play the long game. Long-term anger management is about making your emotional foundation so strong that you're less easily shaken in the first place. It starts with self-awareness. Try keeping an anger journal for a week or 2. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just note down when you feel angry, what the trigger was, what thoughts went through your head, and how you responded. Over time, you'll start to see patterns. Maybe you realize you're most irritable when you haven't slept well. Or perhaps a certain type of interaction at work is a consistent trigger. This awareness is gold. It's what transforms you from a passenger in your emotional life to the driver. Once you know your triggers and your hot thoughts, you can begin the practice of cognitive restructuring. This is the conscious process of challenging and reframing those unhelpful thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking, "He always ignores my ideas," you can challenge it. Does he always ignore them? Or was he maybe just distracted in that one meeting? Is there a more charitable interpretation here? Again, this isn't about letting people off the hook for bad behavior. It's about protecting your own peace of mind from assumptions and distortions that might not even be true. Another crucial long-term strategy is improving your communication skills. A lot of anger stems from feeling unheard or misunderstood. Learning to express yourself assertively, not aggressively, is a game changer. This often involves using I statements instead of you statements. Instead of saying, "You never help around the house, you're so lazy," which is an attack, you could say, "I feel overwhelmed and unsupported when I have to do all the chores by myself." The first statement invites a defensive, angry response. The second statement expresses your feelings and opens the door for a conversation and a solution. Finally, managing anger is intrinsically linked to managing your overall stress. Think of your capacity for patience as a bucket. Every little stressor throughout the day, a bad night's sleep, skipping breakfast, work pressure, financial worries, it all adds a little bit of water to the bucket. When your bucket is already near the brim, it only takes one tiny drop, that spilled coffee, to make it overflow into anger. But if you actively work to keep your bucket from getting full, you have a much greater capacity to handle life's minor annoyances. This means prioritizing the fundamentals: regular exercise to burn off stress hormones, getting enough quality sleep, eating nourishing food, and making time for hobbies and relaxation. These aren't luxuries, they are essential maintenance for your emotional well-being. There is a piece of ancient wisdom, found in the book of James in the Bible, that perfectly encapsulates this entire philosophy. It says, "Everyone should be quick to listen, Slow to speak and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Let's break that down, whether you approach it from a spiritual or a purely psychological perspective. Quick to listen. This is about seeking to understand before being understood. It's about listening not just to someone's words, but to the feelings behind them. It's the antidote to personalization and mind reading. Slow to speak. This is the pause. It's the sacred space you create between the trigger and your reaction. It's biting your tongue long enough for your rational brain to come online. Slow to become angry. This is the ultimate goal of emotional regulation. It's about not letting your initial flash of frustration instantly escalate into full-blown rage. It's about building that resilience. And that last part, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires, can be understood in a universal way. Uncontrolled, reactive anger rarely leads to constructive outcomes. It doesn't solve problems. It doesn't build relationships. It doesn't create understanding. More often than not, it just creates more pain and regret. Constructive anger, on the other hand, the anger that signals an injustice and motivates you to find a thoughtful, calm solution. That is anger being used as a tool for positive change. The journey of understanding and managing anger isn't about becoming a robot, devoid of feeling. It's about becoming an emotional artisan. It's about learning to take the raw, powerful, and fiery material of anger and shape it into something useful, or simply let its heat dissipate without causing burns. It's a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. You won't be perfect. There will be days when you react before you can think. But every time you manage to pause, every time you challenge a hot thought, every time you choose a deep breath over a sharp word, you are strengthening that muscle. You are rewriting your own neural pathways. So the next time you feel that familiar heat rising, don't just see it as a flaw. See it as a signal. An invitation. An invitation to pause, to listen to what it's trying to tell you, and to choose a response that aligns with the kind of person you truly want to be. You are in control, not the emotion. And that knowledge is the beginning of true emotional freedom.